Family loading, please wait. Chapter 6. Judge Penelope Ramirez rarely had a full schedule in her courtroom, even though her jurisdiction spanned 3 countries, and that was how she liked it. Rural Montana was such a far cry from the absolute chaos she'd left behind 5 years ago. Whole weeks could go by without an assault case, or even a robbery. Instead, she generally spent her time settling land border disputes, quarrels between neighboring ranchers, officiating weddings, and meditating divorces. It wasn't work that garnered headlines, and that suited her just fine, which was why she was surprised when her secretary buzzed to tell her that Green Hill Sheriff wanted a moment of her time. She set the surveyor's map she'd been examining down and glanced at the speakerphone over the tortoiseshell glasses.
Did he say what it's regarding, Julie?
No, ma'am.
She frowned.
Well, make an appointment, I suppose. I think we've got a slot open tomorrow before lunch.
Over the speakerphone, a voice that was decidedly more masculine than Julie's piped up.
I was hoping you could squeeze me in now, Your Honor.
She blinked. He'd driven 2 towns over on the hope that she'd see him. Whatever it was about had to be important. She began folding up the maps.
All right, Julie, send him in.
Sheriff Wachowski had his hat in his hands as he entered her chambers, eyes roaming the space.
Nice place.
Oh yes, we were just featured in somebody's paneling monthly.
Penelope slid the maps back into their designated manual folder and set it aside.
What can I do for you, Sheriff?
He closed the door behind him and took a few steps closer, stopping just short of the pair of chairs reserved for visitors. He rocked on his heels, nervous tension radiating off of him.
Quite a big favor, I'm hoping.
I'm not granting your deputy's request for a permit to throw a block party out on Aqua Lake.
That got the lawman to crack a smile, dimples showing as he shook his head.
Oh no, not that. It's something more personal.
She tilted her head, considering him. They had an amicable working relationship, but she could count the times they'd spoken in person on one hand. And now he was asking for a personal favor? To say she was intrigued was an understatement.
Please, sit down, Sheriff.
He pulled one of the chairs out and sat down stiffly.
You can call me Tom.
A small nod, and she folded her hands atop her desk.
All right, Tom. What's this big favor?
He opened his mouth, then shut again, repeated the action, shifted in his seat, drummed his fingers on the hat now resting in his lap. He opened his mouth, then shut again, repeated the action, shifted in his seat, drummed his fingers on the hat now resting in his lap.
Right, and the tornado that touched down on Main Street that day or so later.
It was all over the news.
Yeah, of course, okay.
The drumming grew in volume and he blinked, seemingly noticing his own actions for the first time. Gingerly, he set the hat down on her desk, folding his hands between his knees.
So, back when all that was happening, my wife and I, we found a boy.
Found a boy?
Well, he found us, really.
The dimples returned fleetingly, and then his expression darkened.
From the woods. We don't know how long he was out there, but it was a while.
Penelope's glasses slipped down her nose, and she pushed them back into place with one finger.
Naturally, you reported this to the proper authorities?
In his chair, this middle-aged man squirmed like a middle schooler in a principal's office.
Technically, I am the authority.
When she raised an eyebrow, he continued.
It's a unique situation. He's already been through so much. We just wanted to keep him safe.
She straightened up in her chair, hackles rising.
And it never occurred to you that this child could have family somewhere looking for him?
No,
When her stern glare didn't relent, he quickly continued.
he doesn't. Have other family, I mean.
He gestured vaguely, and she was about to speak again when he apparently found the words he'd been searching for.
He's a refugee. Undocumented. The family he had. He won't go into detail, but we don't think they're alive.
Her eyes widened. This far north, it wasn't as common. But back in New Mexico, she'd seen her fair share of undocumented children come through the courts.
And you don't want to get ISCE involved because...
Because he belongs with us.
The sheriff was sitting up straight now, hands gripping his knees. For a long moment, they sat, spines stiff, shoulders squared, neither one blinking. At last, she unfolded her hands, laying them flat on the desk.
You realize what you're asking is legally dubious at best and criminal at worst.
In my experience, what's legal and what's right don't always sync up. If I thought we could do this 100% by the book, we would. But it's just not possible.
He looked away at the art on the walls, at the floor, before reaching around to pull his cell phone from his back pocket.
Because he's not from around here.
Yes, we've established that.
He was unlocking his phone, scrolling with his thumb.
No, I mean really not from around here.
The phone was laid on the desk, facing her, and she pulled it delicately closer. She squinted at the photo he pulled up, shook her head, adjusted her glasses, and looked again. On the screen was something. Bright blue, covered in fur, with a short muzzle, big eyes, and an even bigger smile, which was aiming at the camera as it rested a baseball bat over one shoulder.
What exactly am I looking at, Sheriff?
Our boy.
He sounded tired but proud.
You're serious? Because if this is intended to be a joke, I'm failing to find the humor in.
That's our boy, Your Honor.
He stretched out an arm, swiped right with a finger. In the next photo, the creature was sitting at what appeared to be the counter of a diner. He was gaping at a sky-high stack of pancakes while a woman she recognized as the sheriff's wife beamed beside him. In the photo after that, he was seated on the hood of a square car, smirking behind aviator sunglasses while the sheriff's deputy stood next to him with a cardboard sign that read, "Take your hedgehog to work day." The next photo looked to have been taken at the Green Hills High School homecoming game. The sheriff's arm peeked into the foreground, as they often did with impromptu selfies, as he held the camera out to fit everyone in the frame. His wife was on his left, and between them, with a blue arm wrapped around both of their necks and a smile wider than his face, was the blue-furred creature. On and on he scrolled each picture, too clear, too well integrated to be the product of digital photo manipulation. And even if it were, to what end? She held out a hand to pause his scrolling and picked up the phone. The lighting was dim in the picture, but the cameras were so good these days that the image was so crisp. Wachowski's face was out of frame, but the broad shoulders were unmistakable, and pressed up against the couch was a fuzzy blue cheek as the creature slept. Carefully, she zoomed in. The plaid shirt had a small dark stain just under the creature's mouth. He apparently slept so soundly he'd been drooling. And all at once, she didn't see a creature any longer.
You're really serious.
She said again, all the former sharpness gone from her tone, as she handed him back the phone.
I know it's asking a lot, but please, can you help us?
He slipped it back into his pocket. She locked her gaze with his, and knew exactly what her answer would be.
You told her?
Mads, I had to.
Tom kept his voice hushed. Sonic had already said his goodnights and gone upstairs, but that didn't mean he couldn't wander back down for a drink and overhear.
She was ready to get on the phone with the ICE. I had to make her understand why that would be a mistake.
Maddie untied the sash of her bathrobe, a necessity for December in Montana, and slipped it off, tossing it on the closed chair in the corner before getting into bed next to her husband.
And that worked?
I think so.
One arm tucked behind his head, Tom watching the ceiling, listening for any tall-tale creaks that would signal someone was out of bed.
She said she'd be sending us a packet, whatever that means. I don't think it's code for going behind her bags to the men in black.
Still, it made me nervous enough letting him go to school and take him around town.
But look how great that's been going.
I know. But that's because it's Green Hills. The people in this town trust you, us, so they understand. Beyond that, she heard the tornado story that ran with, right?
Yeah,
Right. So, did you correct her?
it didn't seem relevant.
So what exactly did she tell her?
What I thought I had to. Nothing that wasn't true.
And she believed you?
Yeah, well, after I showed her the pics on my phone.
And she believed you?
Again, I had to. If she's going to help us do this, she's going to have to see him sooner or later. Better to freak her out now rather than later.
And how freaked out was she exactly?
Worse than I expected.
Really?
Yeah, maybe about the same amount of freaked out you were when you first saw him.
Huh. Maybe I'll like her then.
It's a start anyway. We'll keep our eyes on the meal. Figure out where we go from there.
When do we tell him?
I was hoping to have a solid plan in place first. I don't want to give his hopes up if this all turns out to be impossible.
Right, yeah, okay.
She kissed him lightly.
Love you.
W2.
He cupped her face in one hand, returned the kiss, and then rolled over to turn off the light. As he was lying back down, he felt her snake one arm around his torso, pressing her chest against his back.
This isn't going to be impossible, right?
He laid a hand on top of hers, squeezed.
Not if we've got anything to say about it.
For 2 weeks, they watched the mail closely, but no packet arrived. Via text during school hours, they discussed whether or not it was worth asking again.
Maybe she couldn't figure out a way around the red tape.
She could at least have sent a letter or called or something if that was the case.
Might not be good to leave a paper trail if that trail's gonna land someone in jail.
I guess that's a good point.
This was always a long shot, Mads.
I know.
Love you. Pizza tonight?
Yeah, okay.
So they pushed down their worries and worked to stay in the present, seeing as how the present involved their very first Christmas together. It was easy to live in the moment, especially when those moments involved tree chopping and cookie swapping, an introduction to Tom's parents. The former Sheriff Wachowski and his wife had been eased into the situation over months of phone conversations and texted photos. And while Tom assured Maddie that they were ready to meet Green Hills resident alien, she was still nervous as the holiday drew near. When they showed up at the door on Christmas morning with an SUV filled with presents for a hedgehog who quickly forgot any and all shyness he had, Maddie fought back tears. When they asked her if there might be babysitting opportunities in the future, she had to duck into the kitchen to wipe her eyes. As they gathered in the foyer, at the end of the day, Sonic zipped around fetching coats and scarves. Thomas Wachowski, sir, clapped his son on the shoulder.
So we'll see you in February?
Absolutely. Make an extra batch of that game day chili.
Chili?
The Blibbler paused at their feet and Sonic beamed up at them, a rough-hewn cowboy hat held in both hands. The elder Wachowski's eyes crinkled around the edges as he smiled beneath his mustache.
Best chili in the Tri-Country area.
Beside him, his wife paused in buttoning her coat, the sequins from her sweater catching the light.
One of the only things this one cooks that isn't on a grill.
Can I put it on a hot dog?
Son, you can put it on anything you like. You should come by early. We can show the boy the horses.
The older man laughed as he turned back to Tom.
You have horses?
Sonic squeaked, back on another more booming laugh out of the former sheriff.
It's more fun to ride 'em when there's no snow on the ground, but they never say no to visitors.
I can ride them?
Sonic bounced on his heels, eyes darting between the two men.
Don't see why not.
The hedgehog was a blur again, high-pitched.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh!
emanating from the blue blur encircling them. Maddie entered from the kitchen, a bag neatly packed, leftovers in one hand.
Told him about the horses, didn't you?
The original Mrs. Wachowski took the bag as Maddie offered it up.
If you wanted to bring him before the Super Bowl, you wouldn't hear a complaint from us.
That sounds wonderful, Rosie.
Maddie said, leaning in to hug the woman.
Sonic,
She said as they separated.
slow it down, baby. It's time to say goodbye.
The blur became a hedgehog again.
Huh? Oh, right, sorry.
With a guilty smile, he offered the hat still in his hands.
It was nice to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Wachowski.
The man took the offered hat.
I don't think we need to be quite so formal, son. We're family after all.
Oh,
The smile faltered on the blue, furry face. Above him, Tom and Maddie exchanged glances. Even 6 months in, even after Tom and Sonic's talk in November, the boy was still calling them by their first names or the nicknames he'd given them. If the older couple were expecting Grandpa and Grandma, they might be disappointed. Tom opened his mouth to say what he didn't know, but then his father was crouching down to be at Sonic's level.
Tell you what, son, when Tom was a boy, all his friends called me Big T, and his mama Miss Rosie. How'd you feel about that?
The boy's smile returned full force.
yeah, okay.
Rosie bent down.
And how do you feel about hugs?
He let out a delighted laugh,
They're the best.
and when she opened her arms, he immediately hopped into them. Maddie had to swipe her eyes again, while Tom wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Her heart was so full that night that after they tucked Sonic into bed, she texted Rachel. After 6 months of silence, the sisters reached a truce, and she brought JoJo to visit over New Year's. It only took one afternoon of JoJo and Sonic bonding over sledding and snowball fights for Rachel to warm up to the idea that maybe Tom had been right, though she didn't exactly say as much out loud, and that the blue hedgehog wasn't such a menace after all. The Wachowskis rode that holiday high all through January, and as February settled in, Ramirez and the packet drifted further to the back of their minds. Who had the time anyway? There was PTA meetings to attend to, science projects to construct, books about boy demigods to read at bedtime. There were also teenage mood swings to deal with, and the runs taken with the smartwatch conveniently forgotten at home, and the occasional call from the principal. When he got too excited or upset and something got broken, the attic stairs got slammed and angry voices echoed on either side. But they always wound up together on the couch at the end of the day, even if Sonic sometimes chose to spend the time playing Pokemon on his second-hand Game Boy instead of watching sitcoms with them. And on the flip side, there were Super Bowl parties and boys climbing their front steps to ask if he could hang out. Play was apparently less cool, but sometimes it slipped out. And a school food drive that their hedgehog made sure his homeroom won. They were getting their routine down to an art, and sometime in March, Maddie made the observation that things felt quite a bit calmer as compared to the fall. The emotional ups and downs of their first few months under one roof seemed to be smoothing out into gentle hills instead of sharp peaks and valleys. She could count the number of times Sonic had gotten upset enough to spark on one hand. He was coming to them more and more for help when he needed it. Movie night was now so old, so normal, that he no longer vibrated with excitement on a Friday night. Instead, he snuggled in between them on the couch, with a look of contentment that never failed to melt her heart. March thawed into April. April melted into May. The blooming barren grass ushered in Junior League tryouts, and after that, they didn't have time to think about anything other than juggling practice schedules with homework and learning how to get grass stains out of a jersey material, and whose turn it was to host the post-win pizza party. Which was why when the packet, a yellow envelope so thick it barely fit in a mailbox, finally arrived on a Tuesday in late May, it got unceremoniously dumped on the kitchen counter as the three of them scrambled to get out the door to practice after school. And on the counter it stayed, unnoticed until the weekend when Maddie did her weekly sweep off all surfaces routine. Arms full, it slipped out of her grasp, only to be caught by a blue blur who'd been on his way to the fridge for a Yahoo.
What's this?
Eyes on her task as she sorted out the junk mail from Bill's, she answered.
Not sure, kiddo. Who's it addressed to?
Donut Lord. From some judge. Maybe work stuff?
Her eyebrows and shot skyward. It couldn't be. 6 months after the fact? She glanced down, read the name on the return address. The hair on the back of her neck stood on end.
Oh yeah, probably.
She cleared her throat, covered like it was seasonal allergies, and not the rising panic that was making her chest seize. When she spoke again, she was proud how bored she sounded.
Case files or something. I'll take it.
He handed it over, completely oblivious to its life-changing contents, finished his quest for chocolate milk, and left her alone in the kitchen, setting the rest of the mail back down. She undid the silver fastener and peeked inside. State of Montana, Department of Health and Human Services, petition of adoption. Quietly, hands shaking, she closed it up again. Then, waiting until she heard the stairs creak closed, she took it to the bedroom as casually as she could manage.
So, this is it?
Yep.
There's a lot more of it than I was expecting.
The Wachowskis are sitting on their bed with the rest of their lives laid out across their bedspread. Tom kept picking up individual sheets of paper and putting them back down. The evening had been unbearably slow, via text.
Can't say they're not thorough.
Maddie said, leaning forward on her crisscrossed legs. Her husband pulled a cardstock printed pamphlet into his lap.
No, I cannot. Support groups of adopted parents, can you imagine showing up for something like that?
Her gaze fell on another pamphlet that read, Parenting Children and Youth Who Have Experienced Abuse or Neglect, and her chest tightened.
Might not be a bad idea, actually.
And leaned closer to read over her shoulder, letting out a low whistle.
That's a fair point.
We're not, he's not. He's doing okay, right? All things considered.
She picked up a leaflet, sat back against her pile of pillows. Tom scooted back so he could drape an arm around her shoulders.
Absolutely. Look, build confidence. Who's cheering louder than any other parent at his games?
Yeah, but...
Express support. Be consistent. Allow them to express their feelings. I think we've been doing all right by him, even without a piece of paper telling us so. Could we keep doing better? Absolutely, always. That's what this is all for, right?
Right.
Right, so...
He gazed back out at the square arch of papers in front of them.
Know anyone who can forge a birth certificate?
As it turned out, Coral knew a guy. That guy might have been him, but he offered to get it taken care of for free because our Blue Devil deserves to be counted on as one of us. So they didn't ask questions. It was a bit awkward explaining why he was leaving the house as Sonic and Tom were coming back from a run. Maddie fumbled through an improvised story about swapping recipes and quickly distracted the hedgehog with homework talk, and she wasn't the only one playing the game of distract the boy. Tom was doing his own form of ducking and weaving around the house. There were interviews and papers to drop off and collect. They were seeing a notary at least once a week, and there were only so many times the sheriff could tell his errand partner, "Not this time, bud." Each time the pointed ears drooped a little lower, and he was running out of treats to bring home to ease the guilt. 3 weeks in, and Sonic stopped asking to tag along. The initial process took weeks, which, considering how long it took to actually get started, felt like no time at all. With each document submitted for consideration, they held their breath until they could release it as a sigh of relief when they were approved for the next step, and then did it all over again. All the while, their boy, the one they were jumping through hoops to make truly officially theirs, was watching as they put their phones away when he walked in the room, sometimes mid-conversation, watching as they snapped their laptop shut when he climbed up on the couch, watching as they whispered to each other in the driveway, down the hall, over the kitchen sink. There was a particular moment where he got home from school to find Maddie on the phone with his newly appointed grandparents. Sonic zipped forward to scramble onto the kitchen stool beside her.
Is that Miss Rosie? Can I say hi? I just saw the coolest thing at school about.
Maddie ended the call with a speed that seemed more panicked than anything else.
They had to go. Sorry, honey. Maybe another time?
Sonic's ears pinned.
Right, okay.
He slid off the stool and went to start his homework. That night, going down to get water, Sonic heard Tom and Maddie whispering in their bedroom.
Hide her now.
Be fine.
Was the poor kid.
He knew listening in was wrong. Still, he crept towards the closed door, pressing his ear against the wood.
We can't have him picking up on anything. He'll be okay.
I don't know. He's so sad, Tom. He doesn't know what's happening. Should we just...
We can't. After everything.
Sonic pressed his ear closer, and the door creaked under his fingers. He froze. The people behind the door stopped talking. There was a pause, filled with fumbling and hissing, and then...
Sonic, back in your bud? Sonic, back in your bud?
There was the sound of footsteps. Sonic swallowed, zipping away farther down the hall, just as the bedroom door opened. Tom stood there in the dark, face barely visible. Behind him, Maddie was sitting up, stiffly in the bed.
Just getting some water. Do you need anything?
Sonic said, trying not to let his voice crack. He took a step back towards the stairs.
No, but make sure you get to sleep soon. You've got school tomorrow.
Right, yeah, okay.
By the time he went back up the stairs, Tom and Maddie's door was closed and the room was silent. He went back to bed, but didn't get much sleep, the words tumbling around in his head, bouncing against tightly shut eyelids. By the time the sun came up, he was tired, groggy, anxious, and angry. He pushed away his plate of waffles. He couldn't make eye contact. His vocabulary dropped to nothing but grunts. The car ride to school was a suffocating experience, one he was more than happy to be done with. Slamming the car door closed behind him. Jeremy Perkins was waiting on the steps, brows raised.
Whoa, fight with your Tom?
It's nothing.
Sonic growled, stomping after the human boy.
Just done with that jerk. Him and his jerk car.
Yeah?
And his jerk house. And his jerk dog. And his jerk job. And his jerk wife. And her jerk job.
Sonic pushed the school door open a little too hard, making a group of kids jump.
Uh-huh.
His friend beside him groaned, then vanished in a blue blur. One of the teachers standing outside the door rolled their eyes fondly, saying no running. Sonic appeared again, his backpack and lunchbox gone, books in his hand.
Sorry about that.
Jeremy caught up with him in front of their lockers. They were right next to each other, the result of careful lunchroom bribing, which was good most days until Sonic was in a mood. Leaning against the metal doors, with his arms crossed, Jeremy shoved his things into his own, taking out his social studies textbook.
Is everything okay, Sonic?
It's fine. Totally fine. Totally, completely fine. No problems here. I'm so fine with those jerks in their jerk house, and with their jerk cars, and their jerk jobs, and their jerk phones, and their jerk faces.
Oh yeah, that sounds fine.
Sorry, dude, just not looking forward to being picked up.
Got it.
And that jerk is going to pick me up.
Which jerk?
Maddie the jerk.
Well, what if you didn't go home? Come over today. We can finish the game we started last week.
Jeremy offered as he closed his locker. Then they heard the bell ring over their heads.
Let me know what they say.
The boys separated to go to class. He texted them during one of the transitions. Go out for super speed so the teachers wouldn't notice. At lunch, he finally got a text back,
Stop texting during school. But yes, he can go to Jeremy's.
which left the supersonic hedgehog embarrassed Beers for the rest of the day. Once they got to Jeremy's house, Jeremy scrolled through their saved games.
So, what's your deal?
I don't have a deal.
Sonic crossed his legs, leaning against the back of the couch. Their characters began to move.
People who walk into school like you did today have a deal.
Do not.
Do too.
Do not.
do too.
Jeremy's character kicked Sonic's character. Sonic's character kicked Jeremy's back harder. They played for a few minutes in silence, the air filled only with the sound of buttons clicking and the characters on screen shouting and grunting.
So, what's really going on?
Sonic pressed random keys on his controller, trying to disguise how his hands were starting to shake.
I think
He said, eyes fixed on the screen.
I'll be leaving soon.
The game was paused.
Hey, I wasn't done.
What do you mean you think you're going soon? Going where? Like your family is moving or something?
No,
Then what?
it's Tom and Maddie. They're keeping a lot of secrets right now. Not letting me go out, not letting me talk to anyone on the phone. The entire house has turned into one big secret that I'm not allowed to hear. And I think that the government might know I'm here.
You think?
It makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Sonic felt his eyes burn and swiped at them quickly.
And if that happens, then I have to go. I don't know how long, but I'll have to go and hide until they lay off again. And I don't know when that'll happen. And I just want you to know, because you're my best friend, which I don't tell you enough, and you should know because if I go and I'm not at school or practice, then at least—
Sonic, dude, calm down. Breathe.
Sonic somehow found a way to drag in a deep breath. Jeremy waited for him to inhale and exhale a few times before settling closer to his friend. Both of them cross-legged, knees touching.
Dude, the army isn't after you.
You don't know that.
I do.
But how do you know for sure?
Sonic gestured wildly with his hands. His coil sparked.
My Tom and Maddie are keeping everything one big secret.
And that royally sucks, but I don't think that secret is going to end up with you on the run.
The sparks continued on Sonic's quills.
Maybe because they're letting me say goodbye or something.
And you wouldn't be allowed to go to school.
Which in hindsight made sense. The sparks dimmed.
Maybe the principal knows or something. Maybe the school is protected.
Okay, so what if it is? You definitely wouldn't be allowed to go to practice or to any of our games. Did they say anything about that?
No.
In fact, Tom and Maddie had seemed enthusiastic about the game next week. They'd gotten new face paint and everything. Tom even made room on his overstuffed phone camera for all the pictures. The sparks settled, keeping the couch unsinged.
See? You're not going anywhere. Your parents are just being parents. Which means that occasionally, they'll keep secrets and act really stupid.
You think so?
Trust me, my mom once tried to surprise me and my sister with a trip to Disney. Got us all pumped up thinking we were going to the Everglades. I was ready to see my first gator.
Ugh.
Said Sonic, who'd only seen Disney at night when he ran through. Jeremy shrugged.
It was fun, but sometimes parents keep secrets from their kids and it sucks. But it's not the end of the world. It helps not to freak out thinking you might need to hide from the government. If that was true, we'd all be extra anxious all the time, on top of everything else we've got to be anxious about. And I'm already losing it over that social studies project.
Sonic snorted. The sparks were gone from his quills, and he leaned back against the cushions.
So, you don't think I'll—
Nope. I don't think you're going anywhere.
His friend took in a deep breath and muttered out. He picked up his own controller.
Okay.
Good. Let's start this level over. You were cheating.
Huh? I was not.
You can't speed press the buttons. That's not allowed.
Tom was sitting at the front porch when he got home.
Hey Sonic, how was your play date?
Sonic wrinkled his nose, working to hide his own smile.
Only little kids call it that.
He reminded. It was an exchange they'd had dozens of times, and Tom always thought it was funny.
Right, my bad. How was your super tough, cool guy hangout?
Tom stood up, cracked his back. The hedgehog snickered.
It was great.
Glad to hear it.
Tom trotted down the stairs.
And I'm glad you're here. Mom just called in a pizza, and I need to hit the hardware store on my way back to pick it up. You wouldn't want to, I don't know, tag along, would you?
Sonic blinked.
Yeah, I guess I can do that.
Maddie appeared at the front door.
Hey, Blueberry. Perfect timing.
He felt his muzzle flush. Her list of pet names was getting pretty long.
Hey, Maddie.
She was jogging down the stairs, one hand outstretched.
I could put your bag inside. You're going into town with Dad?
Was gonna, yeah.
He slid the bag from her shoulders and offered it to her. The way they were referring to each other didn't go unnoticed, and it had his brain buzzing. Maybe Jeremy was right. Maybe it was a dumb, non-life-threatening secret they were keeping. Maybe they were feeling guilty and being extra nice on purpose. It wasn't as good as just not keeping secrets, but it went a long way to calm his nerves.
Excellent.
She crouched down in front of him.
Can you stop at Pansies too? I just got off the phone with Miss Rosie and a deer got into our garden and ate all her tomatoes. She asked if we could pick up new plants and bring them by her house tomorrow after school. Can I count on you to help me out with that?
He nodded, finding it easier to match her smile.
No problem.
She reached out and ran a hand through the fur on the top of his head, rubbing his ears.
Thanks, baby cakes.
You could save some of those nicknames for Tom, you know.
He mumbled, muzzle warm again.
Oh, trust me, she does.
Tom said, coming to her side as she straightened back up. He kissed her quickly.
We'll be back soon.
Have fun.
We will.
And they did. It was harder to be worried about dumb secrets when there were power tools to fawn over and tomato plants to select and pizza to eat. He wondered how long until they could tell him. Why they thought they couldn't just yet. Wondered, but didn't worry. Later that night, Maddie sat on the couch, laptop open. Sonic had gone to bed 2 hours ago. They'd gone through the usual pay the toll routine for hugs after Parks and Rec, and then he negotiated for an extra hour reading Percy Jackson in his room. Things seemed to be better now that they'd realized their too obvious hush-to-hush act was throwing a wrench in everything. He seemed much happier climbing the attic stairs that night than he had the night before. She watched the sliver of light peeking through the attic door go dark as she made tea. She'd intended to turn it in for the night once she was done, but Tom had settled in next to her and put on SBN, so she stayed on her computer. As happened more often than not these days, she'd gotten caught up in conversations in the Facebook group for adoptive parents she'd joined. The tea went cold on the end table. She was finally starting to talk herself into powering down when her email notification pinged.
Tom,
Yeah?
Tom raised his head up from where it had lolled onto the back of the couch cushions, blinking at her.
we got an email from Judge Ramirez.
Yeah?
A bit more alert, he straightened up.
We need to submit to home visits.
Come again?
She shifted, turning the screen so he could see.
Before we can finalize anything, the state needs to send out a social worker
To do what?
to see if we're fit parents.
Tom put a hand on her thigh, squeezed.
They need to talk to him too.
They what?
That's what it says. Ramirez says she pulled some strings to get them to assign someone local,
Her husband swallowed thickly.
So, someone who.
who probably already knows, or at least has some inkling that he's not like other kids.
Oh, well, that's good news, right?
No, yeah, it is.
But.
But it means we've got to tell him. Soon, before this person shows up at our door with a clipboard and a million questions about if we feed him enough vegetables.
Do we?
What?
Feed him enough vegetables.
Maddie gave him a pointed look. Tom's laugh was sleepy and slow.
Relax, Mads. We know we're gonna have to tell him eventually.
I know. I don't know why this is freaking me out all of a sudden. This is what we want. And what he wants. It's good, all of it, but it just seems too big.
Too big?
To just bring it up over breakfast, right?
Tom pushed himself off of the couch with a groan that was only mildly embarrassing.
Maybe, maybe not. Let's sleep on it, okay?
He offered her his hand, which she took, and then he pulled her to her feet and into his arms.
We'll figure this out tomorrow.
With her cheek pressed against his shoulder, she nodded.
Tomorrow.